Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dami. If you see my face for the very first time, welcome back, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Anyways, let's get into the details of today's video. But before we get into the details, I just want to put it out here, I'm not an immigration lawyer or consultant. I'm just sharing my experience moving to Australia and what it is like from people who I've spoken to. Whatever I say today is general knowledge. It is in the public space, that makes sense, right? Anyways, let's get into the details. If this is something that interests you, please sit back, grab your popcorn, grab your drink, sit down, relax, and enjoy the video. Okay, welcome. Let's get into the details. So if you're someone who is very familiar with the Australian border update and things that have happened since the pandemic, you would know that during the pandemic, Australia shut its borders to everybody, and like most especially students, which is what we'll be covering today. So yeah, they shut the border, but they've reopened this. This was altered sometimes in 2021 December, I think 15th of December 2021. Yeah, this was altered, and now Australia is happy to have students back into the country. So today I'm going to be giving you all the details, what you need to know to come into Australia as a student, and what the cost looks like, right? So if this is something that interests you, let's keep going. Just like every other country, when you want to come in as a student, eligibility criteria that you need to meet, and there are things you need to do to prove to the immigration department that you are coming in for a genuine reason, right? So I think the first thing you need to know, which is a perk that the Australian government have just offered to students coming into their country recently, is the change in the number of hours you can work. I said in one of my last videos that it is very expensive to study in Australia. It is super expensive. Like my brother schooled here, so I know that firsthand. It is so expensive to study here, but it is worth it if you are able to like transition from that student visa to whatever it is. So it is very expensive, but one thing they've done that is quite impressive is to remove the cap for students. So before now, students are only allowed to work 40 hours per fortnight. Students are now able to work more than 20 hours a week, which is good, right? And that can help you to work and make more money to support yourself through your education period. Another recent change they've made is the fact that if you come in and do your master's through a coursework, you are now entitled to a 3-year visa, as against before it was just a 2-year visa, which is the 485 visa. Like that's your post-study work visa, right? Which is so good, and it's something everyone should look forward to. So for you to get the Australian student visa, there are certain eligibility criteria you have to meet. First is age. There's age criteria, right? And the second would be the letter of, so these are things you need to submit when you're applying, right? So the other would be the letter of acceptance from the school you've applied to after they've accepted you and offered you admission. And then the school also needs to issue you certificate of enrollment. So there's also the health criteria. You have to meet certain health requirements, which is it's quite basic. If you don't have any health issues, I don't think should be a problem. Also, what I didn't mention is with the certificate of enrollment and offer letter, now you're applying to the school. Depending on what the school have asked you, there may be certain additional requirements required by the school for you to get those two things from them. So that's really dependent on the school this time. Also, in applying to Australia, you have to know that there's English requirement. Depending on the country you're coming from and the language in which you study, there's English requirements. You have to meet that one. I've mentioned the health. And then now the interesting one is the funds. It is an interesting one because I'd say because it's expensive, but then you have to meet the fund requirements. For you to come in, you have to have a proof of fund that you're able to sponsor or sponsor yourself through the first year. That's with tuition. you have to show a proof of fund that you have the tuition for the first year available, at least the first year available. And then you also have your cost of living, that's your living expenses. And by this I mean your rent, you have to feed in. So for rent, what it is like in Australia is, depending on the city you are, it's quite similar, but I think you have to be thinking of rent per week. So the rent in Australia, if you don't know, is paid per week. It's you can pay at any time, but it's billed per week, unlike maybe other countries that you pay monthly, or other countries like Nigeria that you have to pay per annum. No, here it is per week. So rent per week for a student would be like between $200 to $300 per week, because if you like take shared apartments with your classmates and things like that. So yeah, it would be about $200 to $300 per week. And then there would be your feeding, let's say maybe $100 for feeding, right? Maybe about that. That's just what the rough estimate of what your living expenses would be. And then for the fees for the first year, so for fees you need about 30,000 from, like, that's the list, 30,000 to $50,000 per annum. You see, like, that's why I said it's a lot. So yeah, that's about how much you need for tuition. So all of these funds is what you present to the Australian immigration, like what you present upon application for your visa, right? Also, it's good to mention that in as much as it is expensive, the benefit is a lot. If you are able to come in and go through all the process, get your certificate, and lucky enough to like get the visa, the benefit is enormous, and I think it is worth it at the end of the day. But the process might be, it's not a sure guarantee that you'd be able to stay here after your education. And one of the things you are even proving to the visa officer that is going through your documents is the fact that one of the things you must be able to prove at the point of application is the fact that you are coming in as a genuine student, and at the end of your education you are going back to your home country. You have to be able to prove that to them. But if during your application they see an incline that you are not planning to go back, that might lead to a refusal of your visa. Another thing you'll be looking at is character requirements. So you're meant to submit character requirements, and I will believe this is mainly like the police checks and things like that you have to submit upon application. Also, to apply for a student visa, you must not have had a visa cancelled or a refusal. It's one of the eligibility criteria. I don't know, I'm not very familiar with how to, if you've been if your visa have been refused before, or you've been denied access into Australia at any point in time. I don't have so much details about how to correct that part, but it's one of the eligibility criteria that you must not have had a visa cancelled before, right? Lastly, what I would say is, just because of the recent news, I was reading the news recently and I saw that there's been huge numbers of students deported upon arrival in Australia. That sounds very interesting, because you would have gotten your visa and thought, oh yeah, I have my visa, I can go in. Whatever I submitted, I was able to, like, I beat the visa officer to it. It's not like that here. So be very careful of what your agent submits for you. I used to tell people, most of these things you can do it yourself. You don't need an agent, because it's quite straightforward, easy. Go to the immigration site, read what the requirements or the eligibility criteria is, look for a school, apply to the school, and do your visa yourself. So now they've deported a lot of people, and when you go into details of what led to their deportation, most of it is fake documents, right? So you go to an agent and they package something for you, and then you jump on the plane. Like the agents, they did their work, right? They got the visa for you. You jump on the plane and, oh yeah, Australia, here I come. And then you get to the airport, and the immigration officers have gone ahead of you and done additional scrutiny even after they've issued the visa, and they're just waiting for you to land in Australia and then deport you back immediately. That's so heartbreaking. So I'll just say, if you cannot do it yourself, be sure you verify and review every document submitted for you. Ensure it is true, it is genuine. Don't let them help you add anything to it. And yeah, so when I was reading, I realized that most of the people they've sent back or deported recently in this 2022 are students who have submitted fake proof of funds. So now they are also wise, and they are putting in more effort to see and confirm this money, like proof of funds you've submitted. So in as much as you want to come to Australia, make sure you plan for it and you are coming in genuinely with no ulterior motive or fake documents submitted with your application, because it's not enough to get the visa. It's another thing to get into the country, if you know what I mean. So just make sure you're doing it with all sincerity, submitting the right documents, and with God on your side, and I'm sure it will come through. So yeah, that's basically everything I'll be saying about the student visa. So let me just recap what I've said. Is one, I think the age requirements, character requirements, offer of acceptance from the school and certificate of enrollment, the health, have I mentioned health requirement as well, proof of funds. By this I mean your school fees, and then also your living expenses, at least for the first year. I've also talked about the updates in recent times, which is 2022, that students, they've removed the cap for students to work for just 20 hours a week. That cap has been removed of what they can work so far, but the clause is so far it is not affecting your studies, because if there's any incline or sign that you're not attending your classes, this can even affect your visa. You can be sent back home if there's any sign, like if they are aware that you're not attending classes, or your school reports you to the immigration department. That's a problem. So you're allowed to work. They've removed the cap, but then again, it must not affect your studies. So also the change is for people who come in for masters and you're able to do a master's through coursework, you are now entitled to a 3-year visa as against the 2-year visa before. Like that's the post-study visa, which is the 485 visa. So yeah, those are the interesting things and updates in the Australian student visa routes category. If there's any question you have, please feel free to drop it in the comment section. I will try to answer as much as possible. This is not my core area, but then if you have any question, drop it in the comment section. I'm happy to ask people, ask my friends, or also just research, and then we can walk through this journey together. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.